Welcome to the Even Better podcast, where your host, Sinikka Waugh of Your Clear Next Step, brings you exciting content about making communities better by helping people get even better at work.
Welcome, everyone, to today's edition of the Even Better podcast. This is Sinikka Waugh, and I am so delighted to be here with you today. And I'm delighted to introduce you to my friend, Lynn Swanson. So, Lynn, before I introduce you here, let me just say thank you so much for taking the time to spend with us today on this podcast episode.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here with you.
This is going to be so great. So I have known Lynn for more years than either one of us are going to admit, but we've worked together in a couple of different environments and our paths have crossed. And Lynn was an early inspiration to me in my project management career and really helped me get my feet under me in some pretty foundational ways. And I have always looked to her for that as well. So in her sort of formal role, Lynn has over 25 years in the corporate world, including internal consultation, training, business analysis, project management, chief of staff, operations, and sales. She's pivoted to leading operations for a tech startup that is super cool and is additionally excited to launch a coaching product that she created while transitioning out of the corporate environment. On a personal level, she is a musician. She plays in 4 bands currently, although that number changes pretty regularly, I hear. And is one of the other things I'm always delighted in about Lynn is her extensive travel. So what a joy. Lynn, this is so exciting to have you here. Just quick off the top of your head, any recent travels? I know COVID has changed some of that a little bit, but maybe your last travel before that. Recent travels that you can share, fun places that you've been?
Yes, COVID has sure changed my trajectory on travel. The only thing I've done so far this year is go to Chicago, so that's not very exciting. But before this all hit, I was on a cruise and I went to Russia.
Very cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
And any recent songs or pieces or gigs or instruments that you had fun with playing? Because that hasn't stopped, I imagine.
That has not stopped. We were on a slight pause, and then we could sort of have determined that the 2020 is the year of the driveway tour. And so we are traveling the city and playing in driveways.
That is excellent. That's excellent. Wonderful. Well, as part of what we're talking about today, you've done some really interesting things in your career, right? You've moved through within the corporate world. You've worked in a couple of different leading corporations, moved in different disciplines, different roles. And just recently, you've transitioned out of or away from corporate America into kind of a different way. And there's just this really interesting things that you have shared that we want to talk about today are 4 things that everyone should do regardless of where they are in their career. So 4 things that all of us should do regardless of where we are in our career. So I'm curious, what is it that inspired you to that? Do you have stories that go into that? Or is this how you have lived your life? Or is this from lessons learned along the way?
You know, it's actually a little of all of those. I was very fortunate, some of the roles that I played, to be surrounded by incredibly talented individuals who just inspiring careers and were mentors for me in understanding that you don't have to have a career trajectory that, you start out at day one out of high school or college, whatever your situation may be. And that's just, what you do for 35 years. And so just learning from others and understanding that there are opportunities abounding. And I would say that especially, in this COVID time, I know it's a terrible time for a lot of folks out there, and people are either looking for jobs and maybe things aren't going the way they had hoped simply because jobs are not extremely plentiful right now. Or maybe they're in a job that they know they can't, or they feel they can't transition out of because of the situation that they're in. And I think that all of those things, while they're very real, those are all things to kind of put into your basket of, maybe I'd call it your basket of memories, things to recall that, all of these things make up who we are and what we do, but they don't necessarily define that we can only be one thing. And I guess all of that together with my experiences helped me to understand and to realize that I could help others by, I'm a good note taker. I'm a good documenter. And so, just by my own personal experiences, sort of jotting down what helped me, I think it just inspired me to realize that I could help others to realize those same aspects.
You bet. And Lynn, one of the things I recall in knowing each other and our relationship a few years ahead of me, you taught me a couple things about project management. But one of the things in particular, as far as like making a record of what you've done and jotting it down, you were the one that inspired me to keep a log, a spreadsheet of the projects that I had been on and what my role was and what I did. And at the time, part of it was to prepare for my PMP sort of, or the application to get the PMP and to take that test. But part of it was, you pointed out that it's just good practice to have a list of the things that we've done and what projects we've worked on and what we accomplished and what roles we did on that. So I've heard you say that we as people rarely have a well-defined sense of what we've already done in our careers.
Absolutely. I think that that's true. I think that it's really easy to sort of get mired in, what we do and how we go about it. And I, again, strongly feel that documentation is a way to, it's journaling, if you will, and to go back and to look at. I'm glad you brought up that example. I don't recall that conversation that you and I had probably many a moons ago, but sounds like something that, I probably was doing for myself. I know I was doing it for myself. And whether you're doing, your annual review that you might be having in your present position, or if you're going to use that for a job seeking, or again, just to have kind of that opportunity to look back and assess where you've been. And I think it helps inform where you can go.
You bet. You bet. Thank you, Lynn. Well, let's dive into these 4 things. 4 things everyone should do regardless of where you are in your career. So let's take the first one. The first one you had was to know your financial situation. Let's talk about more. What do you mean by that?
That one really was born out of, I guess, 2 things. I didn't realize it when I was transitioning out of corporate America until I, again, sat down with pen and paper. But I had so many conversations with coworkers who felt that they were, the term is golden handcuffed. So they felt that they couldn't leave their current position because of, we all find ourselves, especially in corporate jobs, I believe, that the pay is good, the benefits are great, the hours are fantastic, all those things. And so, oftentimes that's referred to as the golden handcuffs. And having those conversations with friends and coworkers to say, I can't make a change because, especially around the pay and the benefits. And again, as I was looking to make a change in my world, I sat down with pen and paper and I said to myself, what is my financial situation? How am I sitting right now? And not just my current situation, but I also looked forward at what would be coming down the road. What would my pension perhaps look like? What would my Social Security look like? All those things that you have to think about that are down the road. I think it's critically important, even if you're not job seeking, it's critically important to know where you sit financially.
Yeah, both currently, where are you currently, and then as far as the future, I've heard you talk about as well, like your future net worth. What are the investments that you've already made? What are the retirement plans that are available to you? Those kinds of things. Just being aware of it helps you really ground yourself in that.
Absolutely.
That makes really good sense. So I think about the different places that I have been in my career and the moments where being aware of my financial situation, right? The single, pre-marriage, whatever that was. And then the young married where we were double income, no kids. And then there was oh my goodness, the cost of children. And then just when you think it couldn't possibly get worse, they're both teenagers and like the money is sort of just hemorrhaging. But being aware of those moments, where are you in your career? Whether you've gone down that particular path or wherever you are, whatever you've chosen to invest in, I think the reality is thinking, I love your point there about making sure that you're aware of, okay, what are your income needs? What are your expenses? How are you spending your money? And we're finding, one of the things I'm so excited about with the group of coaches that we are continuing to expand at Your Clear Next Step is we're finding a whole bunch of young professionals who did not get training in even the basic financial management. So that first step, knowing your financial situation, there are many of us kind of at our point in our career that we can look around and we can go, yeah, we haven't taken that inventory, but we know how. And then we've got a bunch of young professionals who haven't learned that yet. So I'm super excited to know that we'll be offering that opportunity as well.
I 100% agree with that. I think that we're all raised differently. We can just start there with our family life. Some people are raised to understand, with every nickel, you put 2.5 cents away and you can spend 2.5 cents. And there are other people that just don't get those lessons growing up and never learn them in their schooling, never necessarily pick that up in their careers. And yeah, I think it doesn't serve you well not to be aware of your situation.
You bet. I think one of the other things that you brought up, the idea of the golden handcuff, is really interesting. And I think about conversations that I've had recently within your Clear Next Step as we were seeking someone to help us solve a particular problem, and engaging in a conversation with someone who says, yeah, here I am in corporate America, and I don't love my team. I really, really dislike my job a lot. Don't love what I'm doing. It's not the best suited to my skills, but gosh, I can't leave that salary, and I can't leave that those medical benefits, and I can't leave that 401k or that retirement plan. Just really being aware of that allows you to understand whether those golden handcuffs are real or not.
We all know people that, you mentioned it earlier too, the double incomes, no kids, and then the kids start coming along, and I think those golden handcuffs in many cases get even tighter. And for some individuals that they want to raise their children differently, they want to have a parent home with them, or they just work to identify how they can be a single income family. They make it work. And so again, I'm certainly not here to tell anyone how to live their life, how to manage their finances. I really do think it just comes down to an awareness, because that helps inform decisions that you might make.
You bet. I love that. Okay, so let's move on to the second one. So four things everyone should do regardless of where you are in your career. One of them is just to be aware. Get the data, be aware of your financial situation. And to Lynn, to your point just now, this is not a judgment call. This is not a one is better, one is worse. This is a get informed. Where are you? So then your second point is to take an inventory of your skills. Well, what is that? How do you do that?
That's one of my favorite aspects actually of the four, because in my career, being surrounded by, a lot of very smart people who understand how a career can be built, skill sets are something that are not always talked about. You get into a role, a position, and you're taught to do a number of things, and you do your best, and you hopefully get promoted, and maybe you go on to expand that list of tasks that you are assigned. But sometimes people are not fully aware that they are actually developing skills, and skills are transferable. And, I personally was in a situation early in my career where I did not have a lot of mentorship around that. And I sort of had the expectation, or probably more the understanding, that, just that, do these things well, and we'll promote you into the next level, and then do these things well, and we'll promote you into the next level. And it felt like, again, 35 years of doing sort of the same thing, but maybe more broadly, maybe having more difficult tasks. An inventory of your skills, again, at any time in your career, helps you to understand, and hopefully people will take away the idea of transference of skills. So just because, I always use this example, I don't know why, but if you work in Des Moines, you probably worked at an insurance company at some point in your life. And if you've worked in insurance, there's always a chance that you've been a claims adjuster, or you worked in the claims area. And I think that claims is a really interesting job family, if you will, where you could very easily spend your entire career in the claims world, again, working your way up. But think about the skills that you have to have in order to work in claims. Attention to detail, organizational skills, documentation skills, good communication skills. I mean, we could talk for 15 minutes about the skills that you need to be in the claims world. And just that handful that I just sort of threw out as an aside, those are all incredibly transferable skills to so many jobs, so many careers. And I love the idea of helping an individual to document what were the skill sets that were needed in past roles, in current roles, maybe even future roles, and taking a look at those and identifying again how transferable they are from one role to another, from one job family to another, from one industry to another.
Absolutely. Well, and I think of your experience and when you have needed to use that particular skill set as a business analyst, understanding your stakeholders, as a project manager, staffing up your team appropriately and getting folks in the right roles for them. And then in your role as a chief of staff, certainly the inventory of skills, not just what job has person A performed before, but what do they do?
Absolutely right. And again, that's, probably wasn't something I was thinking about while I was learning about that. But absolutely, as you look back and reflect on conversations that you've had with individuals, and especially as, in my point in my life now where I'm wanting to help people understand how to document their skills and how those can be transferred to a variety of other opportunities. Yeah, I think it's a very exciting exercise.
Super cool. Super cool. So, Lynn, we've talked so far about knowing your financial situation. So, 4 things that everyone should do, regardless of where you are in your career. First one is know your financial situation. The second one is to take an inventory of your skills. And that's not just an inventory or a list of what are your job titles, but really helping figure out what skills you've had and how those are transferable. And every time you said transferable skills, I just can't help but think of the Karate Kid, because that is my classic example of transferable skills. Wax on, wax off, and defense.
So true. So true. I'm going to use that.
So let's move on to number 3. So your third of these 4 things everyone should do, regardless of where you are in your career. The third point is to take time to reflect. And this is one of my favorite things in the world. I love to take time to reflect. How do you do this in particular where you are in your career? What do you mean by this, Lynn?
This isn't necessarily easy without sort of going into a little bit of some of the work that I have done toward, literally towards having a coaching product. I have done a lot of work to sort of identify items what should everyone sort of do at any time in their career. Reflection can be a product of many different things. In my case, I love to research. So I have come across so many different, they're just questions, really. Questions that someone could review and identify, what does this mean to me? Let me give you an example of that. One of my favorite, probably less of a question and really more of just hey, you should do this sometime. The statement is, what are 3 things that you would do if you didn't think anyone was going to laugh at you? And I think that, and we laugh, but there's a lot of power there, because it's really asking you to sort of, peel off your outer armor, if you will, and be a little bit vulnerable and think about, what would you really do if you knew people weren't going to say, well, that's goofy, that's silly, you can't earn a living doing that. And the idea of that statement or that action is not so much to identify exactly what you might do, but again, to use that as kind of bumper guards to help you think about, well, what's something maybe then that is adjacent to something that I would do if someone wasn't going to laugh at me, that I can make a good living, that it is an important aspect of who I am and what would make me happy. So I think that it's, if you don't have the natural ability, and I think that people can struggle with this, if you don't have the natural ability to just sort of almost sit back and think and reflect on, again, not only where you've been, but where you want to go, then gosh, Google it or talk to me. But, find some intriguing questions or actions that help you to reflect a little bit about what you're doing and how you're going about it.
You bet. So Lynn, what you're talking about here is a self-awareness and a self-awareness of where I want to go. And when I think about the self-awareness that at your Clear Next Step, I teach it in emotional intelligence. You got to be self-aware so that you can manage yourself, so that you can build relationships with others. But we've got various sort of personality profiling tests that help you become self-aware of who you are. Strengths Finders is a great example that people have used over the years. We also use DISC for communication. And then we've got coaches coming on who use other tools that really help you become self-aware about who your strengths are. But I love that you're taking this now. This is really in a career focus where you're really saying, okay, let's reflect on what you want to do, right? Not just self-aware of who you are, but what do you want to do? How do you want to spend your days? What would light you up? Is that the question that got you into your current role? Was that it? Did you say, hey, how do I want to spend my days? And suddenly find yourself not in corporate America, but rather in a startup?
Not really. It wasn't that direct. I wish it was. That'd be a great story. No, but I did take the time to research. I like the sort of self-reflection, sort of self-aware, type of process there. But I did take the time to think about that and to find questions, to find statements, to find even articles, but anything that helped me to think differently about what I wanted to do. It's really easy, especially, when you find yourself X number of years down the road, you don't necessarily sort of think about what else is out there. And yeah, sometimes you need either a person or just some sort of tool. And you just named a ton of tools that would help anyone to think differently about, what they're doing, what they do for a career.
For a career, you bet. When I think about sort of our parents' generation and your point about 35 years working for one employer, right? You grow up and you get the expectation that you'll just keep getting promoted in that same organization. And so you don't really have to do that. And there was that organizational loyalty, if you will, or that continuity, both from the employer and the employee standpoint. And we don't have that today. That is rare for sure. I know I've got a couple clients that are still celebrating employees who've been with their company for, 40 plus years. And that's awesome. But that is not the norm, right? The norm is that we're changing and we're shifting. And so we've got to keep our eyes open to what we're good at and what we like. And not necessarily, even a job might be called one thing in one place, and it might have the same title in a different place, but it's a totally different responsibility set.
So true. All of that is so true.
You bet. So really taking the time to reflect. Okay, so we're on 4 subpoints, 4 things that everyone should do regardless of where you are in your career. Just taking us back to the structure because I'm so linear. I got to do it. I can't help it. 4 things that everyone should do regardless of where you are in your career. Your first one was know your financial situation. Second was take an inventory of your skills. Third was take the time to reflect. And now we're going to talk about the 4th one, which is really, really unique. I've not heard someone else talk about this in the way that you do. And I'm super excited about this. So that is explore opportunities within reach. What does that mean, Lynn?
Well, I'll use myself as an example, and we've talked about my exodus from the corporate world and sort of taking the time to really honestly to walk through these various steps. And at some point, unless you are just going to lie on the couch and eat bonbons all day, you need to know what else is out there and available to you. And again, I'll go back to, and I certainly don't mean to, ditch on corporate because there's so many valuable benefits from being in a corporate job. But again, if you have been in a corporate position or with a particular company, you get a little bit of tunnel vision. These are the different job groups that are available. These are the different promotions that are available, et cetera, et cetera. And so it's easy to get into a rut, really, to be very honest. And so this is exploring opportunities within reach is, again, to use myself as an example, to open my eyes to all the other available careers that are out there that have nothing to do with a corporate job, not-for-profits, government work. In my case, a startup. There's a plethora of other jobs out there that have absolutely nothing in common, for the most part, with a corporate job. And it's a little easier now, I think, than it was 20 years ago, 15 years ago. You go online, Indeed.com, whatever. There's a lot of job-seeking internet sites out there. But I don't know that they make it easy for you to be aware of the different types of employment that exist. And I think that that's important to recognize.
You bet. So one of the examples in my own personal life, I will never forget the day that I heard about this job opportunity. It was on the radio. This was before the rise of social media. So it was on the radio, and I went as soon as I was back at a place where I could log into my desktop and I could search for it on the internet. It was a job opportunity with Harrods of London, and they were looking for an international chocolate taster. And I did not know that a person could make £100,000 a year plus travel expenses and living expenses by tasting chocolate for a major department store. I'm like, sign me up, man.
I'm surprised you didn't go for that. I think I'm disappointed you didn't tell me about that. I might have done that.
Project management at the time seemed so fun too.
Yes, They're very similar.
For sure. But that one I had sort of stumbled across. And I think what you're talking about, and I think this is part of what you offer in your coaching conversations as well as you're starting to build this around. I think what you're talking about is not waiting for some random thing to be announced on the radio and then be one of, oodles of people trying out for it, but really to actively seek and to look at what those opportunities are within your geographical region or within your targeted focus areas. So do you have any stories or any examples of helping someone through that journey, or even in yourself as you were looking at your opportunities?
I had, again, spreadsheet, because why wouldn't I create a spreadsheet of, again, sort of all these different areas. And I was documenting, who do I know and what do they do and how might I have a conversation with them to learn more about their world. And I sat down with an individual in the nonprofit world, and who had come highly recommended to me that she would understand, a lot of what was going on here locally and what the opportunities might be, and how to really honestly, how to transition from a corporate job to a nonprofit job. That isn't just an easy, you don't just step in. And I was so fortunate. I think we set up, maybe a 45-minute conversation, and 2.5 hours later, we were still talking about, not only my transferable job skills, but all of the varieties, and even a nonprofit it's not a nonprofit is a nonprofit is a nonprofit. Each one of them is very unique and different, what they're looking for in their employees, et cetera, et cetera. And that conversation was incredibly pivotal for me. As it turns out, I sort of decided based on that conversation that really wasn't the direction that I wanted to go, which is not a bad thing at all. It wasn't because this individual turned me off of the nonprofit world, but just really in a very small amount of time, just filled my head with so much valuable information that I could use to make a good decision, which for me was that probably isn't the direction that I want to go.
You bet.
And, it'd be fantastic if everyone could have those conversations. What I guess what I would say is, and you touched on this just a little bit, Sinikka, is reach out to people. People are very giving of their time, and they want to talk about what they're involved in. They want to talk about the exciting aspects of their employment or, their organization, et cetera, et cetera. And people want to help. So I always encourage that if you're looking, if you're curious, reach out, find a contact, use your networks, set up a coffee. It's a little harder right now, but we can still have virtual coffees and have that 45-minute conversation. It could change your life.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So we've been visiting with Lynn Swanson here about 4 things everyone should do regardless of where you are in your career. And Lynn, you have shared these 4 ideas. Know your financial situation, take an inventory of your skills, take the time to reflect, and explore the opportunities within reach. Lynn, thank you so much for sharing these great tips with our listeners. I am so grateful to you.
Thank you so much. It's been a lot of fun.
So as we wrap up, one of the things that I always like to ask is, because this is the Even Better podcast, right? What's making you even better right now?
You know what? I think what's making me even better is taking the opportunity to stretch myself in ways that I never imagined in my, sort of past career. It wasn't easy, of course. Nobody looks back at their career and says, gosh, it was easy. But when you stay within sort of those bumper guards, so you're within an organization or with an industry, and you sort of have those bumper guards, and you can have a very defined path, or you can kind of bounce around a little bit. I think I had a little of both. But now what's making me even better is to very deliberately stretch myself in ways that I would never have expected. Having conversations like the one that I mentioned with a leader from the not-for-profit, but to now work in a startup, to begin to develop my own business, things that I never dreamt I would do. And I think that makes me a better person, let alone better at what I do.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lynn. Well, and so as we keep talking about this, if we may, let's talk a little bit about the coaching product that you're working on, highlights and features that you'd love to share about that coaching product. How's it coming together, and what are some of the things you're most excited about?
Thanks for the opportunity to talk about that. It's coming together really well. I feel that sort of reflecting on, sort of growing and flexing and learning and so forth, I feel that anyone who is in who has taken on a coaching opportunity would absolutely say that it's never static, but I would hope that they would say that you constantly are learning from the individuals that you're working with. I myself am always doing additional research, always finding additional tools and pieces of information that I can share with clients. But it's really, for me, it's been really rewarding to take something that I feel was very helpful in my own personal situation and to be able to share that with others and to continue to build upon it, to learn, to find other tools and again, information and so forth that will help others to sort of expedite their journey. So it's been a lot of fun so far. I'm looking forward to hopefully a lot more opportunities to work with others.
You bet. So as you talk about to expedite their journey, what's the rough shape of the project? Is it, or the product, this coaching product, because you are part of your Clear Next Step team of coaches that we're excited to connect with. Sort of the shape of it, is it a series of meetings? Is it a lot of individual reflection? Is it a group thing? Kind of what's the shape of it as of now?
So in its current form, it looks to be about a 5-part program, finding that, somewhere in the half hour to 45 minute per conversation, sharing of tools. I love the idea of giving a little bit of homework and have had some success with that. So it's talking a little bit about the particular tool of the week and what the homework is and how that will help to work through that assignment, and then coming together again and having conversations about how did that work, what was learned, and it's kind of rinse and repeat for 4 to 5 weeks. And I think so far it's going really well and have found some very positive feedback as a result of working through it.
Outstanding. And so what should a person expect? So the type of person that would be looking at this coaching product with you, where are they in their career, or what are the outcomes that they might be looking for, that the answer is Lynn Swanson?
I would hope that I could work with anybody. In fact, I've had conversations with 20-somethings, again, before you get too far into a rut, if you will. We can have these conversations and we can help, just again, to sort of inform that journey early on. I also could see someone, we talked about those 4 individuals with the golden handcuffs. And I feel that this is spot on for someone who wants to sort of reassess where they are in their career, who has maybe 15 more years, 10 more years, whatever to go. I think that it can help them to identify that, maybe they don't have to be in the situation that they are. And then I think thirdly, for someone like myself that's sort of ready to, maybe you're not really excited about working 55 hours a week anymore, and you're looking for something that, supplements the income, but isn't, you're not still on the treadmill. And I could absolutely have these conversations with someone that is, especially when you think about the financial situation, we can confirm that you are indeed in a good place in your life, but you're not quite ready to hang up the sneakers. And so, we can have that conversation around, well, what is next?
It's really looking at, ironically, their next step, right? What's next in their journey, and helping them. I love that phrase you used, helping them expedite their journey.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Lynn. This has been an absolute joy. Thank you so much for making time today. And to our listeners, thank you so much for joining in. And this is Sinikka Waugh and Lynn Swanson, and we're here on behalf of the Even Better podcast, and we'll catch you next time.
Thank you for tuning in today. The Even Better podcast will be back with more content soon. But in the meantime, subscribe to our podcast or check out our website at yourclearnextstep.com for more information. See you next episode.